All right, so today's lesson is number 78. We're going to continue talking about hyperbolas. So remember back on Friday we graphed hyperbolas. We did the 4 points and the center point. We made the little box, the diagonals, the asymptotes, right? And then the curves either on top and bottom or on the right and the left. Okay, ringing a bell a little bit? A little bit? Okay, so that's what we did Friday. Now we're going to use completing the square to convert the equation into standard form for a hyperbola. So this is exactly what we did for ellipses maybe 3 or 4 lessons ago. Okay, but now we're going to do it for hyperbolas. Remember, the only difference in the equation of a hyperbola is the minus sign, right? So either there's a minus in between the x's and the y's, or we have y first and the x part is negative, right? So very, very similar to ellipses here. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about the foci for a hyperbola. Okay, so just like ellipses have focus points, the hyperbolas do as well. So we're going to talk about those just really briefly, okay? Does everybody have the lesson title written down? Okay, then here are the steps. So just like with ellipses, the first thing you're going to want to do is move all the constants to the right side of the equation and the x and y terms to the left. Okay. Then you're going to organize the x's and y's, so you have your x squared x, whatever, y squared y. And then if there's a coefficient that's not equal to 1 in front of the x squared or in front of the y squared, you factor that out. And then you complete the square for the x's and complete the square for the y's, and factor and simplify until you create one of these two standard form equations for the hyperbolas. So for number 1, the first thing I do is rewrite this equation with the constant moved over to the right side, okay? So I add 175 to the other side. Now I'm factoring out the -4, and I leave space to complete the square. Factoring out the 9, and I leave space to complete the square, and that's going to be equal to 175. Okay, here when I factor out the -4, I'm left with x squared. When I factor out the -4 from here, I'm left with -16x. Okay, when I factor out the 9, I'm left with y squared, and when I factor out the 9 from here, I'm left with a -10y. Okay, and again, I've left space to complete the square in both of those. To fill that in, I take half of b. Half of -16 is just -8. So I'm going to put -8 here. And then half of -10 is -5. So that goes here. Since I'm adding -8 squared, I'm really adding 64 in here. But this is all being multiplied by -4. So I'm really adding 64 times -4, so I'm subtracting. 64 times 4 is going to be 256, so I'm subtracting 256. Okay, over here 5 squared is, or -5 squared is 25. 25 times 9 is going to be 225, so I'm adding 225 to the left side. I need to add 225 to the right. So that's what I have. Over here, I factor this, right? This is a perfect square. So I know this is going to be -4 times x minus 8 all squared. In the y's, I'm going to have 9 times y minus 5 all squared. And on the right side, if I add those together, I get 144. Okay. Now I need 1 here, right? So I'm going to divide everything by 144. And I notice that my negative thing is the x's. Do you see that? I have a negative in front. So this is going to look like the second type. Right? It's going to be, I need to have my y's first and then my x's, because x's are what's negative. So I'm going to kind of flip these to write my final answer. So I'll simplify. I'm going to do the y first. Okay, so I just move the y part down here. 9 goes into 9 one time. 9 goes into 144. 16 times. So this one just came down here and simplified. And then this is negative 4 over 144. I can simplify that to a negative x minus 8 squared over 36. Okay, and that equals 1. So I just flip these here so that the negative would be in the middle. Number 2 is very similar. I'm going to start by rewriting it with the constant on the right. And I grouped my x's and y's as well. Then I'll leave space to complete the square here. A is already 1 for my x's, so I don't have to factor anything out. Okay. But for my y's, I have a negative 4 in front, so I'm going to factor out the negative 4. I'm left with y squared plus 12y, and I leave a space to complete the square. Okay. Over here, I'm going to take half of b, right, for my x's, then take half of b and square it for my y's. So half of 18 is 9. Half of 12 is 6. 9 squared here means I really added 81. So if I added 81 on the left side, I need to add it to the right side. So I'm going to add that. Okay, and then with my y's, I'm adding 6 squared, that's 36. But it's really 36 times negative 4. So that's a negative 144. Okay, so my right side is going to be these 3 numbers added, right? Put that together. Okay, then the left, I can factor these. This is just x plus 9 squared minus 4 times y plus 6 squared. And if I add those, I get 144. So this is 288 minus 144, so I just get 144. Okay, I already have the minus sign in the middle, so that's good. I don't have to flip these then. I just have to divide everything by 144. And I don't need to simplify this at all. It already has a 1, but this I can simplify. 4 goes into 144 36 times, so that'll be minus y plus 6 squared over 36 equals 1. Okay, any questions on numbers? All right, number 3. So I'm going to start by moving the constant over to the other side. Guys, focusing up here, checking your work. I move the constant to the other side. Then here I'm going to factor out 121 in my x's. That leaves me with x minus 2x. My y's, I factor out a negative 4. That leaves me with that. I fill these in. Okay, half of negative 2 is negative 1. So, and negative 1 squared is 1. 1 times 121 means I'm adding 121 to the left, so I need to add 121 to the right. Okay, we're focusing up here. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay, with the y's, I have negative 2 squared, that's 4. 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. So it's like I'm subtracting 16 from the left, so I need to subtract 16 from the right. Okay, do we understand where these numbers are coming from, the numbers in purple? Good? Okay. All right, now I'm going to rewrite this, factoring out the pieces that I just completed the square for. So this is 121 times x minus 1 squared minus 4 times y minus 2 squared. And adding those, I get that equals 484. Okay, 379 plus 121 gives me 500. Minus 16 gives me 484. Okay, we had some problems with the adding part too. And it's important to realize that the 379 is positive because we moved it over to the other side, so it's positive now. And then we were adding 121 because this is positive, and subtracting 16 because that's negative. Okay? So that should have left you with this. Guys, focus up here, please. Is there any questions? Okay. Then up here till we're done. So dividing by 484 across the equation, these simplify. The minus sign is already in the middle, so I can leave that. This simplifies to x minus 1 squared over 4. minus y minus 2 squared over 121, and that's going to be equal to 1. Okay, then for number 4, again, you would just start by moving the constant over to the right, and then you'd factor out each of these pieces. So factor out the negative 4 from the x's, factor out the 25 from the y's, and I'm leaving space to complete the square for each of these. Okay, completing the square with the x's, half of 12 is 6, half of negative 12 is negative 6 for the y's. When I have 6 squared with the x's, that's 36, and I'm really multiplying that by this negative 4. So 36 times negative 4 is a negative 144, so I need to add that to the right side. And then with the y's, I have 6 squared times 25, so that's going to be a positive 900. And factoring this and simplifying the right side, I get negative 4 times x plus 6 squared plus 25 times y minus 6 squared equals 400. And then I divide everything by 400, so I want the right side to be equal to 1. Again, I have a negative with my x's, so I need to flip these. I simplify the y's, dividing by 25 here. That gives me y minus 6 squared over 16. And then in the x's, I can reduce this. I get x plus 6 over 100. X plus 6 squared, over 100. And that's just going to equal 1. Okay, after this in the lesson, we went over to the homework for tonight. So we talked about number 1. We remembered how to graph this, which is... we start with the center. Center here is going to be 0, 2. My a value would be the square root of 20, which reduces to this. And b would be the square root of 5. I plot the center, and then I go a units to the right and left, b units up and down, and create the box here. And then I make my diagonals through the box. And since y is first here, that tells me that the hyperbola is going to be on top and bottom, so I reuse these points. And now it wants us to know the focus points, and we talked about back to the lesson. In order to identify the focus points, you have to solve for c in this equation. Okay, so you'd use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A squared and b squared, remember, are just under the x and y terms in your standard form equation. So setting this up for problem 1 from the homework, we would have 20 plus 5 equals c squared, which is just 25 equals c squared. So c equals 5. Okay, so for our hyperbola from number 1, it looks kind of like this. You would go 5 units up and 5 units down. This is always going to be on the major axis. So if our hyperbola instead went to the side like this, then we would go 5 units from the center this way, okay, to the right and left. Okay, so we'd want to include this in your notes, these last 2 points, so that you know how to do those first 6 problems. Okay, and then back for number 1, this is what it would look like. Plotting those points. So, okay, so if I go 5 units up from the center, I would be right here. And then 5 units down, I would be at this point. Okay, so the first one is 0, 7, and then 5 units down, I'd be at 0, negative 3. Okay, so we can find the coordinates by just adding that distance to the center. Okay, so good luck with this on the rest of your problems, and I will see you guys tomorrow.